Welcome to The Drop, where we ask you and me to drop our lives to follow Jesus more and more. We're trying to get closer to him, trying to really grow in Jesus and trying to love him more and follow him, okay? What I want to talk about today is something that's happened on the internet. And a guy called Carl Lentz, and he used to be the pastor of a New York Hillsongs, and you got the Justin Biebers going there and all this kind of thing. It was quite a, very well media covered thing, and stuff happened with him, which I won't go into. But what he's done this week is he's been on Ruslan. If you don't know who Ruslan is, go on YouTube. It's a great guy, great setup, a Christian guy, gets all the big names in. Ruslan's great, I like him. But Carl Lentz goes on there and starts ripping into small churches. And more than that, the people who lead the small churches, saying that they're incapable of growing big churches. They are only, criticising things that he did because, it's like a school playground where they have it in for the smart kid, the ones who are really doing well. And he also says that, God's not in those churches and all this kind of thing. Look, I want to just put a statement forward. I want to ask a question, right? What is a church? What is a church, right? Now, people will go to church this Sunday, and we're popping in one down the road, which is something that not structured like we do, really enjoying it. So it's not like as if it's an us and them thing. We have much sympathy for good men who are doing good things in these contexts. But if we ask ourselves, what is a church from the Bible? What does the Bible say about church, and what doesn't it say? We get some light about it, really, and we've got to stick within those parameters. And there's a modern theory that church is wherever Christians gather together. And they quote Matthew 18, when 2 or 3 are gathered together, I am there among you. Now, that is true. But the context of that is when there's disagreements in the church. It's just a reassurance that, when you do this process through Matthew 18, I'll be there with you. I'll be amongst it all, Just do that process and you make sure that I can be, in that situation. But people quote that and say, whenever 2 or 3 are gathered together, God, Jesus is there. And they're not wrong. But that doesn't make it church. So it doesn't make it a particular church gathering. And I think around the early 2000s to mid 2000s, there was the emerging church movement where, I wondered if I was part of that once, because there was something emerging with me. I was emerging with biblical church mentality. And but it wasn't. It was like going around to the pub and, don't get drunk, but going around to the pub and saying, yeah, we went round to the pub and had church. Sorry, who went round to the pub? About 5 guys. Where? How was that church? Well, because when 2 or 3 are gathered together. It's out of context and it's not quite right. Now, you might disagree and that's okay. But the New Testament does tell us, what church is like. And it actually assumes that we would know what church is and what church isn't. I'll tell you why. In 1 Corinthians 11, Paul, this is the second part, let me just get these goggles on again. 11:17. I'll put the scripture up there. Paul describes a meeting in a home, and he's telling the people off, and he's saying, listen, you come in, right, and some of you are getting drunk and scoffing all the food. You know what I mean? What's been, so number one, there's tons of alcohol, enough to get a person drunk, and there's also lots of food. So even though the tokenistic kind of cracker and the sip, which I'm not criticising at all, but I'm just saying that it's become tokenistic, when actually Paul felt this was the centre of what ecclesia was, to have a full meal together. So if you go to someone's home, this is a British thing as well, not just a Jewish one. When I was young and we were meeting people, you'd say, do you want to come round to ours for dinner? I could still say it now. Come round for dinner. Or in Australia, you say, let's have a barbecue. Come round. And it was a gesture to say, I want to get to know you. And then, in Christian circles, this will become family. And it's a rich family dynamic and all that. So come round, we'll have a non-alcoholic wine and, we'll have some steak or something like that. So that's the kind of the picture of when you want to get to know somebody and how family's formed. What do you do when you come together as family? Christmas, eat food. What do you do when you come together as a family on some occasions? And my family's it's fairly scattered around Perth. But when we come together, it's always around food. Always is. Because family and eating is not just a Jewish tradition with all the feasts, what they had and all that kind of thing, but it's actually something that still carries over to today in many, many different cultures. And then homes. Winston Churchill said, we build the buildings, then the buildings shape us. And I think that's true. We become the buildings, the environment, what's the ambience? The ambience of the building. What's going on in that building? And then you find out a lot of government officials, they get, shaped by their environment. Teachers shaped by the environment. Engineers shaped by their environment. Christians shaped by their environment. And that's concerned me a lot over years about the shaping. I wrote a book called The Shape of Kings to Come, and that's the second in the Cogs of the Kingdom trilogy. You can get it on Amazon or just ask me, I'll send you a PDF. What am I saying? So it matters to God. It matters where we go and meet together as believers. And it mattered here because in this passage in 1 Corinthians 11:17 onwards, Paul says that this is the ecclesia. He mentions the ecclesia, home-based, around food, and basically the correction was to say, when we come together, let's eat it together as the church, as the ecclesia. And then a little bit in that in the chapter, he says, do this until the Lord comes. Okay, last time I checked, the Lord hasn't come yet. Okay, and we should be still doing this. 1 Corinthians 11:17 onwards. This isn't the only evidence. I'm going to do a few of these this week, and the title will be "What is a Church?" Because if we can say to Carl Lentz and others like him that churches were more like the small guy, they were more like the rustic, perhaps even just breaking double figures, perhaps in the 20s, towards 20 people in a church. I'm not saying if more people come, then turn them away. I'm just saying, look, if you do get something what's, grab someone's attention and, you get loads of people come, then just do another church. You'll never be short of leaders who want to do what you're doing. You'll never be short of people who want to step up. It used to be called a church split in some of the denominations. Oh, there's been a church split. Someone wanted to lead. Oh, who gave them authority? And you're like, well, there's a good shepherd and the chief and head of the church, and he can send his sheep where he wants. So what you do is you just say, look, none of this is mine, okay? Because it's Jesus' church anyway, always has, always will be. So when somebody says they want to lead, then just let them, and just bless them, and facilitate them, and pray for them, and and if they fall flat on their face, come back, we'll love you, and all that stuff. And the best thing that could happen is that happens in relationship with each church, each autonomous church in relationship with each other. Anyway, I'm waffling now about church. What is a church? Well, 1 Corinthians 11b mentions that that's a church, and it's not describing what we see mostly today. Now, at the church down the road, on a street corner, building, seats in rows, it's not a home. It can feel like family. I'm not saying it can't. They've got the cracker and the sip as the meal because they want to honour that, and that's great. But what I'd say is that what they had here had purpose, and I'm going to pull out some of that purpose this week. I don't really want to go over 10 minutes with this, so I'll wrap up now. When Jesus was at the Last Supper, he said, "This do unto my remembrance," and those who were sat there listening to him did not go out with a cracker and a sip. That's not really what the intention was, but deep, rich, and personal fellowship around the table, around the God's table with food on it, where you can know everybody and you can share. People get to know you. People, each person. 1 Corinthians 14:26. When you come together, each has a word, each has a something to bring. Not forced, but if they want to and they feel led by the Spirit to do it, do it. And we do this on Sundays. This is how we run church. We want it to be as closely lined up to the first century church. But what happened? History happened. That's what happened. And when the apostles died, the early church fathers moved away a lot from these things that we're looking in 1 Corinthians 11:17 onwards, particularly. And we've got something now in the church which is more like what they said than what the apostles said. So were the early church fathers important? Yes. But also they diverged away from what the apostles were about. Now you can forgive them for some percentage because they didn't have a written word like we've got, the Bible, okay? They didn't have that. But when we have the Bible and we can see that, then we've got a responsibility to act. Now, getting back to the Carl Lentz thing, Carl Lentz has been rude, really rude to people who feel called to the smaller thing, to the house, to the, you know, the few, not the many. And you could go off about these big gatherings and what they actually become. They become, yeah, I'm not even going to go into it on this one. But I don't want to criticise, you see. I don't want to have a go at them because I know some people who are doing a great job in the early church father setup. And there's just no point in going into that territory. But I'm just saying, what is a church? I'm leaving it here now. 1 Corinthians 11:17 onwards, Paul says, home-based, a full meal to eat together, and do this until the Lord comes. Come there with hearts that have already been repentant before the Lord. Don't have any big, long kind of, you know, things going on where we have to get everything right. In other parts in 1 Corinthians, you can tell that they're all sharing, and the gifts would come out there. I like to call them graces because that's charis. You know, I don't know why they put gifts in the New Testament because it doesn't really translate well, but how God has graced you, that's what you bring to the meeting. And also, you know, testimony, singing, get a guitar out. It doesn't have to be, you know, some of these, you know, some of this corporate worship is very moving. It's like because of the scale of it, you know, it's just so good. But so a guy with a guitar, you know, I say to our people, it's about you coming with an attitude and a posture of worship before the Lord. So if you've got no instruments and you hear a cockroach falling down the stairs in a bag of crisps or something like that, then you can worship to that. Silly. But you can worship to that because you're in a posture and you've come with that intention to worship. I'll leave it there for now. What is a church? Let's have a think about it, and do comment, subscribe, like, do what you like.
Catch you.